Okay, TJ? You left.
All right, ready? All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the January 13th regular board meeting, first one of 2022. We just went through our organizational meeting, and this is our first regular board meeting where we do the business of the board for the Rosemont School District. I guess our first order is a
Here, Rios?
Here.
Okay.
Here.
Hemsley?
Here.
Magnus?
Here.
Turner?
here.
And we have a quorum.
Excellent. All right, so our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I move to approve the minutes. I second.
Okay, so before we do this stuff, there are minutes to approve this month. I did not send those out to you. We didn't have special board members, so normally we would be approving the December board minutes. We did not really have board members. I didn't send those to you ahead of time. We will approve those at the next board meeting.
We'll do December and January and February program. That makes it easy.
And then one of the other things I wanted to point out, so tonight we're calling the roll in alphabetical order, and then it'll be on a rotation after that. So
Thank you, Chair.
that's how that goes. So there is no improvement this month.
It's good, there's nothing in the folders or anything. So perfect. All right, so 1.4, we'd like to acknowledge everybody here. Thank you for being here and being with us. That will be short, just a moment, opportunity for those who wish to address the board to do so. All right, and communications. 2.1. Let's see if we got anything. So we are good to press. All right, so 2.2 is community comments. If anybody would like to get up and address the board, as usual, we ask you to keep your comments at 3 minutes so that we get an opportunity to use this. Please step to the mic, state your name and your association to the district, and welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Eli Hurwitz. I am the Yellow Springs Education Association president, and I represent the teachers and nurses in our district. There are two main ideas that I would like to get across tonight to the community through you, their voice as the school board. First, COVID learning is heartbreaking. Second, catching up needs to be removed from our vocabulary. I know our community knows this. I've heard all of our administrators verbalize this sentiment repeatedly in many ways. The educators in our schools want to be in person for as long as possible. While many students are missing school in staggered droves, while waves of illness are interrupting their learning, we want to be here when they get back. However, the community needs to know that we will not be able to catch up. Just saying that is painful to admit. It sounds like failure. The educators you employ want every student to get from a recognized point A to a recognized point B every year. The educators here are working harder than ever, not for pity or apology, but because this is the work we do. I have heard all of our administrators recognize this hard work repeatedly in many ways as well. This year there can be no point B. We will take our community students as they come and as they are and move them forward. We have always taken students from where they are and moved them forward. This year, the expectation cannot be the point B of years past. It must just be forward. This will be success. We will carry every student that shows up from here to the end of the school year, meeting them where they are and providing as much learning as we can along the way. When we teach online, many of our students are even less able to access success, to access learning. COVID learning is heartbreaking. Students are missing school due to their parents' rightful anxiety or their own rightful anxiety. COVID is scary. When they are home, they are not getting the learning we can provide in person. When they get back, we will help their learning move forward from where they are. We will not be able to catch up students. The more we think in these terms, the more we pile anxiety on the already anxious. COVID learning is heartbreaking, and we must stop saying, catch up. We must stay consistent with our COVID safety protocols and continue to move forward like we currently are, with reading projects and essay contests, with social and emotional growth, It comes from in-person relationship building. We are learning music without singing, acting, and art from a distance. We are learning through projects while practicing COVID safety procedures. COVID learning is heartbreaking, but in the end, learning always makes things better, and I could not ask for a more caring group of teachers for my community to learn from. Thank you.
All right. Does anybody else wish to address the board? All right. Seeing nobody else on the microphone, we are good to move on to 2-3. And I don't see a...
We do have a student access.
we do.
Do I have it?
Yes, you have.
Okay. So, little technical switch, maybe. Can you help me, John?
Yeah.
Sorry. I gotta do a quick switch. Did you see now?
I did. I emailed it to you. It was a forward.
It's gonna be worth the wait. I promise.
It is.
So what is school and action? What is that part of it? What
So
is it?
typically, maybe a teacher or students would come in and talk about their project that they are working on in the classroom. Hopefully, we can get back to that at some point. But for today, you are just going to get me. But it is probably one of my favorite things that has happened so far this school year. And as I'm talking, Dr. Holden, maybe you could flip through those because it's actually kind of long. So I will describe this project. It's a
So
project.
I'm just gonna ask there again. Okay.
So if you could just kind of flip through.
Yep.
You can listen to me in the background and hopefully see some of the wonderful projects that the students have created. This is a first grade project. The first grade teachers got together in the first semester and they started the project, The Greatest Part of Me. It's just a powerful title alone. It was a way to support each student to build a sense of confidence and self-awareness within the classroom community. So, we've all heard of this learning progression that refers to the sequence of teaching and learning expectations. In a simple form, it would be learning your numbers, then learning how to add, then learning how to subtract, multiply, divide, fractions. When they were on remote learning, the emotional progression, did not progress as quickly as they would if they were in school. So the teachers started talking, and they recognized that it was time that they needed to focus on some interpersonal and social emotional skills for the students to kind of navigate the school environment, the face-to-face, in-class, in-person learning. So in preparation for this project, the students read, "What do you do with a tale like this?" And I'm sure many of you are familiar with that book, but it just goes through and it has a lot of different animals. What do they do with their nose in the environment? What do they do with their ears, their tails? So the students had a discussion about that. And then they had to write an informational piece about their favorite body part. And what I love so much about this first grade project is they were so confident and they all chose different body parts and different things about their body that they just love. They were creative. So you'll see one, his favorite part was his brain. One was a birthmark. It's just really powerful. And the pictures were done by a professional photographer that hired to come in to take these pictures. And then you can see beside, it tells why that is their best body part. And then at the end, they created this book that each parent of the first grade students or families will have access to. So I'll give you a few seconds to just look at all of these pictures.
Well, while I'm going through this, I'm going to mention that Ms. Winston probably doesn't know this, but we are part of the League of Innovative Schools, and in the fall and spring they have what they call convening, and
spring. That was one of my favorites.
Beautiful.
I just love the positivity of it.
And you can just see how creative they were with, what they were selecting, and they didn't just get one picture. I think they got to select from different pictures, but just the confidence that they show on some of their faces, the expressions.
Some you probably can't resist text, and some of these are just visual.
Yeah, so, and one of them will say, what do you do with a heart like this? I love my heart because it beats. It is alive. Because if I did not have a heart, I wouldn't be alive.
So you're a really good first position or your plan was.
And that's interesting.
So we do have the photographs hanging in the second grade hallway. So if you have a little break when you go into session, take a look down that hallway and you can see them, and then you will be able to read what each one of them said. But as first graders, it was amazing to me to see what they came up with.
So, and this was for social emotional learning. I mean, it's really powerful for us looking at it. When this got put together, I mean, the culmination of it, did the students express the same sort of wow with it too?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you, I wish I had a first grader here to explain it, but they were so excited, and they were grabbing adults and other friends and taking them over to their picture. Look, I picked my heart. So you just hear the conversation, and it just really makes me think, as adults, so much social media and so many things happening in our world right now, just to take a second to step back and really think about you. And I have to tell myself, when I look in the mirror and I put my makeup on in the morning, I point out everything that is negative. And somebody said recently, would you say the same things about your best friend? Why are you saying them about yourself? So I think this is a really good, it just was a really good way to kind of end the first semester, and a way for students to feel confident and to express that confidence to their classmates and to adults.
Yeah, the connection between social emotional learning and self-advocacy, you see it right there, the right line, and that's exactly what you said.
And parents have access to a copy, and the version there on copy.
Parents do have access, the first grade parents do have access to that.
Thank you for sharing this.
And that's what school mentioned.
All right. That's great, thank you. All right, so I'll take administrator reports. I don't know who wants to go first, but.
So usually 2 times a year, I don't do a regular board report because we get what is called a special education profile or rating from the state. So the profile comes in the winter, and the final rating comes in the summer. But you will see in the report there is a little red box at the top and it says what's different. Things were disrupted. It usually uses our AIMS information, some of our testing information from the previous year or from previous years, depending on the indicator. And because of COVID, that got disrupted, so the timeline got disrupted. And so in starting it back up, we will have this profile with indicators that could have some action attached to them. And then in May, we'll have another profile, a second round of it with just the other indicator information. And those are just how are we doing with these indicators regarding students with disabilities. And then in the summer, we'll have our regular rating, and we'll be back to twice a year instead of 3 times a year. So if you go down on this, you see that it just gives a target. The Ohio Department of Education makes a target for each of these indicators, and then you'll see, the spring's result as of the profile in December, and then some of them have a brief description. So a lot of them will say no report. Oftentimes that happens to us because they need a minimum number in order to do their calculation, and they're too small. Sometimes that happens over the past year here because of a disruption in calculation, or two areas where actually the disproportionality was reconfigured. So that's new, and it's a little bit redefined. So if you look at this first page, the first thing you'll see, early childhood transition, and that is kids coming from preschool, from going to preschool from early intervention services need to have that transition and how you can place that in for the birthday. So that is something that is reported and tracked, and we need to do that so that there's no interruption in services. We don't have a report. We typically make this. This is usually not an issue, but we just didn't get a report because of COVID and the disruption in your services. Math and reading alternate assessment is next, and you'll see we didn't meet that. So what I did, I knew you had some questions about that. I gave you a piece of paper that is highlighted. Alternate assessment, and you'll see an acronym that is called AASCD. It is alternate assessment for students with significant cognitive disabilities. That means some students with disabilities have intellectual impairments that are so significant that it would not be appropriate for them to take the regular tests that we take the state tests. So they are offered an alternate assessment. That is a team decision. The special education IEP team makes that decision. And if you pull out what I gave you will see that the target from the Ohio Department of Education is that they would want 1% of the tested population or less taking the alternate assessment. Well, so what happens if you have a few extra kids who just happen to have those kinds of disabilities and that's not appropriate? So that question always comes up, and that's why I gave you this piece of paper. And it's regarding that 1% cap, and does that limit, how many can actually take it? No. Really, it limits the number of students who are assessed to 1% of the total, but the state cannot prohibit a district from assessing more than 1% of its assessed students with alternate assessment. However, what the state has to do is if you go over that 1%, they must require a district to give a justification as to why they went over, and then they have to give appropriate oversight to make sure that we are going through a decision process and that those are appropriate placements, and then they must make that justification publicly available. So those are things that are in law that the state has to do because the state is held to that 1%. So then that trickles down to the districts getting the indicator of the 1%. We had 7 kids. So, and I think 2 more moved in. And then I think 1 graduated from the Curtis Center. So I think we have 8. I don't think that's excessive, but we will do what we need to do. That's the action required. It's typically a justification. This year it will probably be a little more of a plan, but that changes from year to year. But I wanted you to have a good explanation as to why we often don't need this. So
It sounds like that when it's not met, it triggers additional reporting.
exactly. Additional oversight. And it's okay, it takes us things to go through at every IEP meeting. They have our special ed supervisor would sit with the team, Jody J, and she would take them through a flow chart. And they would also have some training. It's virtual now that we send out to them. It used to be in person. But it's just to really think about making those decisions, and especially early on. So, if at all possible, we want kids taking and being prepared to take the regular tests to graduate with the regular assessments, regardless of their disability. But in those cases, for those
It's easy to swing that percentage.
many districts cannot do this.
I have two questions about that. First, it seems that this is a regular occurrence in Yellow Springs, and that you don't meet those requirements. Is that right? Or did you see something new in this report?
All of the time, I think, all of the time I've been here 7 years, we have not met it. Nor had the district that I was at previously.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense. You both have explained why. My second question is, what are the repercussions for us not meeting that requirement? Besides, the extra work that we have to do.
Typically, it is the oversight, and this year, the oversight includes working with our state support team 10, just on that education piece, and just having a plan to make sure that we are really looking at those decisions. We did that previously, so we're fine with doing that. We want to make sure those individual discussions happen at the meetings. I think the only question we would have is if somebody qualified for it 1 year. I think it feels odd taking them off of that, especially if they have been taking alternate assessment. The thing with being an alternate assessment is you are using the extended content standards, which are extended to address more diverse needs, and usually particularly for somebody that might have some struggles, more significant struggles than most. And if you've been working on that trajectory all of your life, all of your school education and by high school, I do feel kind of awkward taking someone off. But in reality, the team can decide that someone's on, and a couple of years off, years later off, and then they can go back on.
It's a case by case.
That is case by case, and that is permitted, but I think if someone has been on alternate assessment for several years, I think we do hesitate quite a bit, fearful that we would overwhelm somebody or
We don't want to disrupt our
disrupt what they've been doing. That's the only thing that I think we would ask more guidance on. So I think it's relatively positive because we get somebody to help us just kind of talk through our process and make sure we're doing everything we should and returning the justification. So.
I think it demonstrates that we're meeting our students where they are.
And if it's a steady number, then that would be less troubling than if it's growing.
Right. I think actually ours has, but I do think we had our enrollment drop a little. We had 2 kids move in, so it's like that. But we're usually a little under that 2%. You'll see our result is 1.99 and 1.99. And so for math and for reading. And I think that if you have somebody move in from another district and that's appropriate for them, you're not going to say, no, you can't. Our number might be higher. So,
Thank you for walking us through it.
all right. The other,
Can I have a quick question on that? Sure. Terry, you or Donna, do you know what percentage of schools in the state actually meet that standard?
I do not.
That's a good question. We could ask the SST, they would probably have a better understanding.
I mean, I'm just curious if the standard makes sense, if nobody's meeting it.
I can tell you that the state is not meeting it.
Right.
The whole state of Ohio is not meeting it.
Yeah,
That's why it's kind of trickled down to districts to each of us do our part so that the state will meet the federal requirement.
Oh, so it's from the federal
Yeah,
government.
this is a federal determined.
Yes.
And are there any punishments for not meeting?
Thus far, no.
Please?
Thus far, no.
No.
I think they've been more focused on other of these indicators that schools actually have control over, disproportionality of discipline and things like that.
Yeah, it's something to be mindful that it's a priority for the state who, can govern our indicators and these types of reports, but so far it hasn't been, something that we're going to be action for.
There's not pressure put on.
But it is something disability versus students without disabilities, to see if we're disciplining more harshly if you have a disability. And then the second part of that, below that, is looking at that not only by disability and non-disability, but looking at race. And it's part of this that in disproportionality is kind of repeated, but looked at in a little more detail at the end. They didn't have a report, again, that was because of our size. And then secondary transition, everybody who is in special education needs to have a transition plan in place that meets requirements by age 16 or older. And we have to be perfectly at that 100% compliance, and we are, so we have that target. Post-school outcomes. This is a survey. Typically, either a guidance office or a special ed supervisor will do a survey with students who graduated who are on IEPs. And then they have to call them a year later and find out what, where they ended up. Are you in college? Are you in a training program for some profession? Are you actively employed? And then we report that to Ohio. It is a longitudinal study, and school districts get to participate in that on a rotating basis. So we have no report because it was not our year to do that. When it is our year, then we'll have a report. But the TBA typically means that they're changing the target or they haven't set it. So that's why one will say TBA and the other will just say not required, which the next one is similar to survey, family survey. This is a little bit newer. And it's, again, it'll happen on a rotating basis, maybe every couple of years. And it was not our year, that's why we don't have any results. And those are not our surveys that we create. That's something regulated by the Department of Education. The one below that is timelines. We have specific timelines that need to be followed for initial evaluations, and we need to meet them 100%, and we do. So that is met. I didn't put an explanation in here because that's pretty straightforward. Compliance, this is about having no late or non-compliant or uncorrected issues, and we are finding that area we don't have any. So we met that indicator, that target for that indicator. And then this last part is the part that is really done. We don't have a report because of our size, and I think also because it was redone. It didn't have complete. It had a little bit of information, but not so much listed under it. And it is looking at over-identification as far as placement. There's different categories for special ed. Are we over-identifying a category? Are we over-identifying a placement? There are placements where you're outside of the classroom for a little bit of time for your services, like less than 21%, or you're out, between 21 and 60%, or you're out over 60%, or you're sent to a whole other facility because you have all these needs. It's not a punishment. You're sent to another facility because you have needs. Separate public school, a learning center in Greene County. And so they're looking at the numbers there, and something's overrepresented in some categories. And then the second part of that, they are also looking at, similar to the discipline, the expulsions and suspensions, but it's not 10, it's 10 days, but they are also looking at removals, and they are looking at it based on disability and non-disability, but also special ed categories if there's over-representation. Are we, sending more kids with other health impaired ADHD? Are we suspending them more? Are we suspending more kids with ADHD who are multiracial than white? So it's kind of broken down, and that's a newer category. But again, you need a certain amount. We have very low numbers in those areas for both non-disabled and disabled. So for the specifically discipline, so we don't have a report.
All right.
So I want to talk about two long-standing traditions that we have in Yellow Springs that we look forward to every winter. The first one is our School Chorus Festival. So this year we held our 73rd annual School Chorus Festival. I try to go out there and it's a camp out for our students. And it's the tree sale that's out of John Bryan. It's really fascinating to me. I go out and I see a lot of the same families coming back, and I see a lot of YS alum who are reminiscing about their experiences with School Chorus. It's neat to see such a long-standing tradition. I think Mr. Day has been the advisor for School Chorus, I want to say for about 25 years now. So he has this festival running as, like a well-oiled machine. But it's always a highlight for like our students' school experiences when they look back and think about the days being out there and just what the atmosphere is out there. This year, we actually sold just over $6,100 worth of trees. So in a typical year, we sell around $4,000 worth of trees. So to sell $6,100 worth of trees this year was a really good year for us. It was looking like rain all day on Sunday and it ended up pulling out. So we had a warmer weekend, good weather. The downside is, we look at our records every year, we replant trees in accordance with how many we've sold. But having such a big sale, we're actually going to be limited on trees a little bit in the next couple of years. Just because trees that typically people wouldn't have bought, they bought because that's what was left. So that's a really fun tradition. The second one is our Senior Citizen Luncheon. So this year we held our 41st Senior Citizen Luncheon. That typically is held at the high school, and we normally have our students come in and perform. So our choir sings, our band plays, our orchestra plays. In the past, I think sometimes our elementary students have even come up and performed for our seniors. And it's just a really nice tradition to support and celebrate the seniors in our community. When COVID hit, last year we actually transitioned to like a delivery. So instead of the seniors coming in, I think the seniors are actually most interested in the gifts. So we wanted to make sure we held that, and they also like the food. So we started delivering, and we worked with the community, or the Senior Citizen Center here in town, and Christy Nielsen organizes all of this. Last year we gave out about 130 lunches, and this year we gave out just over 100. So the Community Foundation kicks in, and they provide gifts for each senior, and I think our elementary students made a little artwork for each of the seniors. So I think we had 7 or 8 central office staff and administrators who went out and delivered to the homes. So it was really, it's so exciting because you pull up and you go to knock on the door before you can even knock the door open. So I think, for so many of the seniors, they were excited just to have that, that little thing that's different in their day. So a very fun tradition here in town. And then the last piece is just a winter sports update. So last year with COVID, we had to cancel swimming because we couldn't get into any pools. So this year we were able to get the Xenia Y for our students. So we were able to offer our full offering of winter sports. Our younger students, it's interesting because the elementary programs were impacted last year. So like our middle school basketball teams are struggling this year, but it's a great learning experience for them. And our numbers are great. So it's the strongest we've been, I think as long as I've been here, as far as total participation in winter sports. So right now we have 124 students in the winter sport. We have about just under 45% of our high school and middle school students participating in either a sport or an extracurricular. So when we started thinking about this idea of being in school and kids feeling connected to something, when we went virtual, the year we were virtual, all of our clubs were non-existent. I mean, we would host online meetings, nobody would show up. So when you think about the idea that we're providing something that our kids are looking forward to for nearly 45% of our kids, it's again evidence that being in school helps beyond just the academics. And then just to celebrate our 2 varsity basketball teams, our girls team right now is, they're now 10-4, and they are leading the conference. So they played everybody in the conference once and beat everybody in the conference once. Our boys team is now 10-2. They were kind of in the driver's seat in the conference and they got upset last Friday night. So we're still leading the conference, but we're tied. So assuming we can go back through and be able to again, we'll win the conference outright. So to have both of our varsity basketball teams, sitting at the top of the conference with strong records, it's great for us. So we've had a great winter season. We had a great fall season. Our soccer team really did well. Our volleyball team did well. So it's nice to see that success continuing.
Thank you. How much more of the season before you get into your?
The postseason for, I think, swimming and bowling starts like maybe the first week in February, and then I think girls basketball starts the second week in February, and boys basketball the week after that. So really in the mid-February is when the postseason really starts. So normally the tournament draw, I think, is right at the end of January, and then the postseason after that. And we did, I typically don't point out individual students on team sports, but Angie Smith is a senior for us. She's been on quite a run, so she scored her 1,000th point, I think her sophomore year, maybe early in her junior year. This year she scored her 1,500th point when we played Dayton Christian. And then she actually just passed her sister on the all-time scoring list. So her sister was her last 1,000-point scorer. So she just passed her on the all-time scoring list. So if she continues to score at the rate that she is now, we may have a 2,000-point scorer here, which will be the most in school history. So pretty exciting to be watching.
Okay, for Mills Lawn, much like Jack, I'm kind of wrapping up the end of 2021. And our student council, they were really excited to begin the food drive again this year. And the donations went to the Methodist Church Community Food Pantry and the Little Food Pantry, both here in Yellow Springs. The goal was 50 items per class, and they surpassed their goal. It was really fun to watch them come in the conference room and sort everything out. And Joe Fraley and Riker would go through and make sure everything was, not expired. And it was just really fun to see students doing one of those, annual events that they like to do. Something that excites them when they come to school. So we were able to donate those, and the students were also able to go over as a field trip to the food pantry, and they received a tour of the facility and kind of heard from the volunteers what does it mean to the people that kind of benefit from those food pantries. You can see pictures there. Our pellet dissection. Fifth grade students, they were studying ecosystems. And I definitely was called to the classroom to come witness this one. And the kids loved it. And you could just see them holding up, all the different bones and skulls and jawbones that they found. That was in Miss Barclay's fifth grade classroom. And then the bulldog jog, I believe in the November meeting, I discussed that. That it was coming up, and we had many families participate. We had over 40 Mills Lawn students participate. That did not include the number of high school students that came back to participate again. And then we had community members and other family members that participated in the 5K. Each student was awarded a ribbon. They had snacks. We had hot chocolate. And the PTO will use that money raised to continue to support our teachers here at Mills Lawn.
That was a cool day.
It was a freezing cold day. It was snowing. And as I was driving to Yellow Springs, I thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But Wakasa Sims, one of the first grade teachers, we did it together. We finished the 5K. And then I think she talked me into doing a 5K once a month for the year 2022. We will see how that ends.
Have you done January yet?
No. We haven't done January. Actually, she was trying to find one. So if anybody knows of a 5K in January that's still coming up, we'll try it. January events, the band concert unfortunately has been postponed, but the orchestra concert is scheduled for Wednesday the 19th at the high school. That is still scheduled to occur.
Ms. Winston, I wanted to add that I was so pleased to see that in the food drive you included, or the council included the menstruation project. I think that's part of basic needs, and I was so glad that it's got to consider that there. So.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so we are now on to 2.5, which I can tell already will be the favorite part of most of my board meetings. We get to hear from the man, the legend, the vice president of the board, the Green County Career Center. So Steve was on the school board, and I know will be again someday. But he last year we had him as our representative to the Green County Career Center. He is now the vice president of that board, so he is here to tell us the happenings today.
Yeah, we need to one of the things I was going to announce. Sorry, I said that here. So yeah, well, first off, we have a new member, Gail Martindale from Cedarville, did resign and retire. She was on for 22 years, I believe. That was a really long time. And so now we have Matt Sheridan, who is representing Cedarville now. He is also a board member as well. And yes, we then had our organizational meeting, and Jimmy Taylor, who is the president, and I am the vice president for the
I didn't really go back in my defense. You had it on Facebook. So.
I did.
I liked it twice.
So of course, people want to know, COVID has not been a major factor because everything is so hands-on. We have been doing quite well with distancing as well as mask wearing. It's still not necessarily required, but people are doing it. That people are kind of looking up to what's really happening here, and especially with Omicron and sort of these outlying factors that most people don't really know. So we're kind of smartening up a bit, and yeah, because of that, it seems that we've been doing okay with it. The best news we've been getting is that we already have over 450 students who have already applied already, and that is before our open house, which is one of my birthdays here, the 27th of January. And I just want to show they have some really cool representation on their pen. I'm going to run to the camera real quick just so that can before I reveal it, I'll give this to you guys and pass it around. Hopefully they can see that really well. But as you'll notice, they have Malcolm representing representing the Career Center. But of course he is.
Can you just again the mic again?
Oh, sorry. So yes, Malcolm Blunt is who they wanted to take a picture of. He is representing not only Yellow Springs, but one of our new courses that we offer, which is Advanced Engineering Tech. And so he's one of the first of the students on that, and he made it to the pamphlet, which I was extremely proud of. So if you would like to know more about the Career Center, January 27th, which is a Thursday at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, please come out and check out all of the new, brand new building, brand new classes that we're able to offer. We have the space, so please feel free to come out and check out what we have there. And then, last but not least, if it's possible, I'd like to get the principal's reports because we like to have some happy news about what we all it goes so that by the time I go to the next meeting, I'll be able to give the Yellow Springs report. That will give the Senate, the other side of the stuff that they want to hear about what our kids are doing, because that's really important to all of us when we talk about what's actually happening in our schools as well as the commercial. It's really nice to see you all. Welcome to Newport University, to say the least. This is really happy. Oh, you all.
You were going to keep it?
Yeah, I was going to say, Angela Reagan says hi, and is still a little upset that they are looking, of course, all laughing. But yes, they are searching for churches. But says hi, and it's just like, yeah, she gave you more than 2 thumbs up if you can. So, welcome as well. It was good seeing you all.
I think you're required to say the rest.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
What is the capacity of the Career Center for students?
So, the last building, it was 700, nearly 800, so it's like 700, and I think 80 was the code, and we never broke 690. Now we can have over 1,100, and right now we're at 800, we're almost at 900. And so the fact that 450 have already applied is a very good sign that our numbers are growing, which was the point of the new building and the point of adding all the different curriculum that we now have.
Is it is every high school year able to go there, or is it just junior and senior?
It's just junior and seniors, yes. Right, so after this open house, there's going to be where they reach out to some sophomores, and usually they come to the school to check it out. And there usually is one more open house around April. So for people who are maybe just thinking about it, or for sophomores of that year to kind of look early and see if they're able to do it that following year.
Are there certain standards a student has to meet to get in?
It depends on what it is you want to apply for. So certain things are wait lists, and they will absolutely suggest you go somewhere else because, of course, seniors have priority. Well, the juniors turning seniors will have priority, so they're just filling the rest of those seats. We now have more seats, but we also now have more applicants. So no, you are not always guaranteed. However, they will offer something else that may be related, and so you may be able to go in there and maybe a seat can open, which is possible, but for the most part, certain things like if you're veterinarian, you do have to have really good grades in, say, science and math. Nursing, there are certain ones that you absolutely must qualify in order to be able to go.
Are there some opportunities that you think are pretty golden, but maybe not something that's on the student's radar that you want to talk about with them?
So we have a new drone program where you will end up with a pilot's license certification after 2 years of learning how every single thing you can about all of the latest in drone technology. That's been a big one. Also, the advanced engineering tech has also been big. And I guess another one I'd like to also speak on is literally local airports built a tiny hangar off campus and gave us a ton of supplies so that we would be able to have people certified in aeronautical engineering because they're having such an issue with keeping mechanics. And usually they'll go to the bigger companies, so a lot of local companies are having issues. If you are interested in that, they're waiting. They're literally like there to recruit. So if anyone is interested in airplane mechanics, that is, I was able to see the whole thing. It's really fascinating. But I mean, there's planes. It's really fascinating what they already have, and that's another thing that just started this fall, where, yeah, we would love to recruit more for that, but that's a tough one to,
No, actually, but it's a great thing to get involved in. I mean, if you think about the local Hannah family, that's kind of, they made this cool.
especially with how many local airports.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this area who made their living making airplane parts or automobile parts. So learning to be a mechanic and learning the brakes, that gives people opportunities to come to that.
Yeah, I would say those are the three new big ones that people either know about or definitely applying for, or don't know about, like the aeronautical mechanics.
You know, how some students don't like regular school, but like a technical, these kind of technical skills, hands-on, you know, they could excel in, that they haven't excelled so far. Are there any accommodations or exceptions made for students who maybe have, you know, not been very interested in regular school, but now, you know, this could actually be a really good program for them? Is there any kind of consideration about things like that?
Oh, absolutely. Major consideration for that.
What is it?
Major consideration for
yeah.
that. Yeah, and in fact, that's a really big, it's a stigma that's been put on vocational schools for the longest. The career centers now is sort of the second chance schools. That aspect of it is still alive and well, but there are so many more people who are applying because of what they can offer in certification.
It's incredible.
But the concept of not having the best grades is not a reason not to apply to a career center if that's something you're interested in. And you'd be surprised between graphic designers, TV, camera work, there's so much, and it's one of those, come to the open house, you'll be able to see all of it.
It's certainly worth a visit. It is an absolutely stunning building, and the dev drawing lab is just pretty amazing. So whether it's at the open house, I think, they would always encourage board members to come view the facility.
Absolutely, that's something you can easily plan if you need to come with that, And veterinary would be another good one.
What?
There's something, going back to Amy's question on anything that stands out, the veterinary.
There's probably a lot of young people interested in that.
Yes, if you are interested, it is a really great program, and they usually tend to be up out there, so it's every year.
So I think it's worth foot stomping again in a loud voice that the Greene County Career Center is holding an open house again on the 27th of January from 5 to 7 p.m.
Absolutely.
And
Come on.
come on. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Steve.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, 2.6, so district county recognition and introduction.
2.6, January is a special month. It is school board recognition month. So, the actual sign is in the boardroom. There's a poster, but I would like to thank you for your service. This is, I spoke about this at the December meeting. It's not easy task, particularly in today's climate. So we appreciate your service, and again, you get to take this wonderful certificate and take a very small component of our appreciation for your work. Thank you.
All right, 3.1, our treasurer's report. Into the numbers.
Yeah, just real quickly, unless there's any questions, I'll go through some of the highlights. That's small, so let's move on to the next one because nobody can read that. Is this the first 6 months? Or
This is FY
Yeah, go on.
First 6 months?
The first 6 months, but you'll see we're also lagging in our expenditures compared to budget versus actual, which if you go down to the cash balance at the bottom, and look at the bottom right corner there, you will see our projected cash balance. We're ahead of the game. We were projected to be about 4.8, we were at 5.1. So we're $300,000, as far as budget versus actual, to the good. Haven't run into any bad expenditures. So that is what I would say is highlights.
So we're coming off of let's call it a rocky 2 years of public right now, right? It's probably been harder to predict, especially expenditures.
Yes.
Getting back to normal, where it's easier to, it's looking like a regular school year, or how's that looking?
Yeah, so, well, the expenditure, as far as your guys' year here last year, as far as being remote, that actually reduces a lot of expenditures. So we're starting to see a lot of those expenditures come back, as far as like transportation, and stuff, cost with that. Revenue has certainly been something that's hard to predict, and where, a school district that has income tax, that was sort of the hardest hit part of the pandemic. Our numbers for income tax, if you look at December or the first 6 months, the numbers are up on income tax, which is I also saw that I agree with you as well. So that's just showing the economy recovering and people making the money that sort of back to pre-pandemic levels. So if you want to go to where does the money come from, that's a pie chart here. This just sort of breaks down where your finance is coming from. 43% are coming from real estate, really 44% with the personal, and then 21% of our income has come from income tax, other local, and then state foundation only provides 13% of our income. So you can look at this in different ways. Is it good or bad being more locally funded? I will tell you this is above the state average as far as how much our revenue is locally funded. It gives it more control for the board that all your revenues are coming locally. You're not relying on the state as much, but then of course the burden is more on your taxpayers for that.
Jake, could you explain the difference between the state tax allocation and state foundation? So state foundation is at 13% and state tax allocation is 7%.
So the state foundation is based on your enrollment, and how much you get in state foundation dollars is based off of factors of how wealthy is your community and property values and income. The state tax allocation is money that the state is paying in taxes that they have offered relief for people's real estate taxes. So it's a portion of that would be real estate taxes, but the state has offered relief programs for that, and you're receiving state tax dollars for that.
So when we have a new funding phase in zoning district, what is it called again, the fair school funding plan? That's going to fall into the 7%.
No, that would fall into the 13.
The 13%, okay.
Okay. You want to move on to where does your money go? Now this is only looking at general fund expenditures, but this is the biggest chunk of what our money goes to is salaries. And then the next biggest chunk is fringe benefits. That's our medical, dental, life, schools and everyone to see. And purchase services, could be a multitude of things. This could be, repair services, but it could also be services for students, occupational physical therapy, things like that. And then the smallest portions of our budget are supplies, capital outlay, and then miscellaneous is just, all those little pieces that don't fit into that.
What is the capital outlay?
Capital outlay would be any expenses that are going towards, would be like an object level 600 thing, but something that's going to last more than 5 years. That's being paid for by the general fund space.
And traditionally, we haven't included the current improvement levels included in this.
No, so permanent improvement will be all capital outlay. So its pie chart would show one thing.
Yeah.
So it would make a very good pie chart. So this is looking just at your general fund, which is the largest fund in the school district.
So that would be, so, if you compare that to the capital outlay of the 2% pledge, I guess one of the questions would be that, how big of that is. You don't have to.
Yeah, okay. I would have to look at how much we have in the permanent improvement and how much we plan on spending this year versus how much we're planning, how much we're spending on capital outlay out of the general fund.
Okay.
So what happens is the smaller your permanent improvement fund means the more expenses that your general fund is going to have to pick up that cover that. We have a permanent improvement fund here. If an expense came up that the permanent improvement fund couldn't cover, that's when your general fund would have to pick it up. And really, what you see is just that chunk of capital outlay grow from your general fund, depending on what your needs are. Okay. And there's a whole, let's go to the line graphs. So this is looking at our percentage of revenues received year to date, where we expect to be and where we're at. We would expect to have 48.5% of our revenues received at this point year to date. We are at 47.6%. That's where I talked about our revenues are a little bit behind comparing that budget to actual, and that's the visual representation of that.
Is that within a margin of error that you think is common?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then this is that same bar graph looking at the expenditures year to date, where you would expect to be at. The benchmark is 48.23% of our expenditures would normally be met at this point, and we're at 44.35% at this point. Going back to those earlier things, that's where, we haven't collected as much revenue as we would expect at this point, but we also haven't spent what we had budgeted at this point. So it's a net gain. This is just the bank reconciliation for the month of December. And then there are the account balances. Are there any specific questions from the board since you've had time to review these?
Can you just, so outstanding checks, AP, I forgot to ask about that. What is the
Accounts payable.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right, so now we are in the folder of our agenda here. So that's the adoption of consent calendar for the
recommending to the board to approve the certificate of availability for industrial electronic service in the amount of $24,151.12. This is what we call a then and now. We had money then, we have the money now. It's just when you don't get a purchase order on time, for a certain dollar amount before it approves those. This was for the sign at the athletic sign. So this is for our payment to that. We move down to the gifts and donations.
Is this like at the gym?
For the new outdoor track.
So, just the way that it's written, is formally, go through the motion on this one, or, no?
Yeah, that'll be the final vote on the financial section. So all section 4 will be voted on.
Okay, it just looked like there was, for the way that it's in, I'm looking at it, like,
No, that's 4.1, so that just starts us off on all on the floor. Yep.
okay, all right.
And then we have the section to accept the gifts and donations. We're accepting a $1,000 donation from SHP for the scholarship to be awarded to the seniors in the class of 2022. And then the second one is a donation from the Chappelle family for the purchase of boys and girls basketball uniforms and gear for the 2021-2022 season.
Great. Okay. Any questions?
Okay.
And the scoreboard has been installed.
Yes.
And when was that installed?
Well, probably very involved, maybe November. There's problems with the whole thing.
It's too cold.
No,
Right. Yeah, there was a.
I think some geographic, geological problems. But yeah, it looks very nice.
I'd just like to thank the folks who made donations and gifts to the district. It's greatly appreciated.
Oh,
So,
yes.
thank you very much. Especially stuff that impacts our students, like basketball uniforms. It's amazing. Super excited to be wearing them, and obviously the results are rolling in too. So they're having great students with it. So yeah, it's great to appreciate. Awesome. Any questions? We good?
No question.
All right. Call the roll.
Yes. Sierra Rios,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Kempling,
Yes.
Magus,
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
All right.
Okay. My update this evening is about one thing, and that is COVID. Can we all see this? Is this good enough? Yep. So, I do want to say, this is updated from when we had the first one large for one reason. I was able to grab today's numbers, and I thought you would want today's numbers. So the copy we have is up to date in here. And it is up to date in board notes. Okay. So we've been in this storm for 22 months. This pandemic has been incredibly hard on everyone, including, and especially parents and families. Our children are our most precious asset. They are the heartbeat of the community. And we always want to make sure they're taken care of. We've made great strides in these 22 months. And we have vaccines, we have boosters, we know a lot more. But each day still is a challenge. And I will say, I So I'm gonna go through each building's numbers. And this is not how we post them at the end of the week. So I want to explain what this is, and then we'll go from there. So this is for Mills Lawn. So this column is total student absences, okay? So you can see 29 goes down, goes up, goes up, goes up, goes down. And this is all absence. It would be medical, unexcused, excused, and then we have a separate code that is called medical pandemic. Okay? So all of those categories are in total student absences. This percentage of students absent is you take the total absences by the number of students in the building. And in this case, the N for Mills Lawn is 310. So these next two columns, students each day who were quarantined, students each day who are positive. That positive column is included in the quarantine because if you're positive, you're quarantined as well. So you can see those numbers have gone up, as have the positives. And so this percentage of pandemic absences as a percentage of our total student population. So while January 4th or January 6th may be higher than what it was January 6th in 2019, at this point, it's not unexpected, and it's still manageable. We meet every day. The principals, myself, both nurses, Jeff Iyer, who's done an incredible job. I'm surprised the man gets any sleep. We meet every day to talk about this and to plan. So does that make sense how those numbers are laid out? Staff for Mills Lawn, kind of the same way. Quarantines, positives, here's why we didn't break that down, because when any district, and many around us have made this decision, when they make the decision to go remote, it's because of staffing. And in the end, it doesn't matter why. All that matters is you either have them or you don't, right? I mean, it does matter, the illness, but in the end, it's are they able to come to work or not. So you can see, we had a couple days here. Tuesday and Wednesday this week were highest, but look at the drop. So that's Mills Lawn. Any questions about Mills Lawn? So here is the middle school, high school, set up the exact same way.
Here,
Yes.
because people are watching it, I just wondered if it made, I didn't hear you say like there were the absences out loud.
Do you want me to read every
Just the
day?
numbers. No, just the last one, the 13. I just
Oh,
wondered.
for today.
For today, because
For today.
people who might be watching.
Sure.
And this is available on.
This
docs.
is in board docs.
Yeah, so the whole
This
thing
entire
with
presentation
this
is in
document
board
too,
docs.
so if
Yeah.
you're following along, you can go to board docs and pull this down right now.
And I'm happy to read it if it's.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that last numbers, because they're very good, I think.
Yeah, so today, total student absences at Mills Lawn, 42. That's a 13.55% absent rate. Total students quarantined, 12. Of those 12, 6 were positive. That's 3.87% of our absences are pandemic related. Total staff, 2, and those were both pandemic, and that's 5.56% of staff.
I think that you also mentioned for those two steps that you had subs that stepped in, so there was enough teachers.
Today, somebody was looking down on us because we were fully covered.
And I think that's
In both buildings, so today was a good day, yes. McKinney and the high school, you can see theirs, it really reflects Mills Lawn a little bit, except they had 3 days that were high last Friday, and then I think Monday and Tuesday, and then they dropped. So their social interaction of adolescents. And then you see the staff absences. Again, they're operating at about total staff absences. So here are today's numbers. 108 total student absences. There's an asterisk there. I'll explain why. Which is almost a 30% absent rate. Quarantine 35. Of that, 14 were positive, which is a total of 9.64% for absent rate due to the pandemic. 3 staff absences, 2 of which were pandemic related. Which led to a 5% pandemic absent rate for staff. One thing to note before I go to the 108 is that the quarantines and the positives, as you look through there, know that those numbers are what when we meet, we call kind of rolling numbers. Because as folks get off quarantine, some folks may come on, but you see the number for the day right here. Anybody guess what the 108 is? We were so thoughtful in our vaccination clinics in the past, but guess what we did yesterday? We held a booster clinic. We held a booster clinic, and that's what it is. So don't be alarmed.
Which one did you give?
I think we did Pfizer.
Pfizer.
Yes. We had 80 students and 2 adults. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank the district for providing that in the schools.
Yeah, we're so happy to do it. But when Mr. Haddon told me this morning, we have 108 applicants. How did this happen?
That's great. Well, you know it's working. Right?
Yes,
And they're
it was
being
very
positive
successful.
too. They're not coming in.
That's right. So, kind of related, our survey. We sent multiple messages out to ask parents to just complete a form saying, is your child vaccinated, yes or no, and the dates if you know them. We've only had 395 responses. I think that we made 3 or 4 attempts. So, 278 parents, we don't have responses for 278 students. Of the responses we did receive, 24 were unvaccinated, and that is actually 23 unvaccinated and 1 refusal to disclose. But we have 371 of those who are vaccinated. So we have if we were to take those 278 as no's, that would still put us at 55%. I think we're much higher than that. It's just,
That's the minimum.
at minimum, we're at 55%.
And we're a lot higher than the county average.
We are higher than almost every school certainly in Greene County, much higher than the county average, yes.
But the 278 are people who responded to the survey without telling you. Those people who just didn't respond to the survey.
Those are people who just didn't respond to the survey.
So, I think, okay.
So even if we say half of those are yeses, we are doing really well with student vaccination. So,
Do you have these numbers by campus?
no, it was just general. And here's what I want everybody to understand, both the board and the public. We can ask this, but by law, I cannot do anything with this information. So I can't say, you can do this or you can do that. But I think this is good news. I would think this is good news.
I think it's great news. I mean, if the minimum that we're looking at is vaccinated is 55%, it's really impressive. For 5 to 11 county, it's only 23%. And even if we're only looking at the 12 to 17-year-olds, it's only 50%. So we're way above that.
Right.
I think in the charts that you gave before this one, also it's wonderful to see, at times like this, right, when people can see this trend, it gives people it gives people the information to know how things are progressing here at the school. Well, I'm very glad that you provided just general absences in addition to, so that people can see the trend is consistent between them.
And I want everybody to know that in our meeting today, our nurses, who, man, thank your school nurse. Let me thank every nurse, but also thank your school nurse. They will tell me exactly what they think, and they did today. And what they said is, Terry, we're doing well, and our numbers are plateauing. They even went so far as to say, I think they're decreasing, and I said, well, I'm okay with plateauing, so we're going to go with plateauing for
Well, it's important, I want people to remain, I want the public to remain vigilant, so let's try not to, because it's vigilance and it's working together that is going to get the district through it, right? So, and again, the trending information, I think that's very powerful, and that really helps people get an overall picture. If it's possible to give that view in the future, we'll talk.
You know, we want to be as transparent as possible, and I'm going to go so far as to say that we have been. You know, I can't control how someone interprets what we present. You know, if you see this and take it as not true, I can't control that. All I know is how hard everyone is working to make these schools safe for our children. And so just to do this, we keep all kinds of data. So when we want to communicate it, we think, how do we best present this so that it A, makes sense and really allows folks to see the full picture of what we're doing. So you can see that we are not immune here in Yellow Springs to this. I'm not sure that anybody can be. But I can tell you that our numbers are so good compared to other numbers. And so I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues, and I will not name the district because I respect him, his numbers were really low. And I said, well, great job. And he's like, well, that's great, but we don't have to track. So, you know, it's not, we do things differently here, and I think we should be thankful for that. But I want the community to understand that when I say, for example, today we had that many students out at Mills Lawn or McKinney, that's the real number. And that when we say we had X number of students quarantined, that's the real number. And we have lots of data that is protected by law that we can't share. We have detailed notes, and those nurses, and quite honestly, other personnel at the school are on the phone with parents all the time. So we are making it work. We're not making light of it, which is why I said we're not going to say decreasing. But honestly, Amy, if the numbers are decreasing or plateauing, it is our responsibility to say that. You know, I think this pandemic is going to, you know, I'm not a scientist. We may have moved in, or starting to move into the endemic stage. It's just going to be here. So we need to figure out how we are going to respond to this to make sure we get the job done that we need to do.
I think the experts are consistent in saying that we're nowhere close to the endemic stage. But the hope is that again, these trends, we're in the middle of a very significant spike with Omicron, and I appreciate the time that you put together the trending information. While we're in this spike, it's moving quite a bit. That's, I think, very helpful information to the public, and I hope that the public finds it reassuring, because these are numbers that, you know, that the school is required to track, you know, the absences. And so these are numbers that, you know, that the public can see the consistency in the trend. And so those numbers, I hope that trend is a way of providing the public assurance in what is a difficult time and a time where there's a lot of dynamics. So thank you for preparing that, because, I contribution as a parent. Parents is a-
I wanted to ask, when the students are in quarantine, what do the teachers do for them to help? I mean, if they're quarantined, but they're not really sick, or if they're sick, but they're not that sick,
So we
are
use-
they going home with schoolwork?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the principals feel address that.
So I want to publicly thank our teachers. I mean, everybody's been in the middle of this for so long. Our kids have, our families have, but our teachers have, and our teachers are working so hard. If we go back to the beginning of last year, the idea of teachers who have been teaching for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, some of them relearning the whole craft to go to the online setting. I think just the hours and the attention that they're putting in. Our transition last year, I think, really set us up to help with this right now. So like in our building, we're running everything through Google Classroom. So that helps tremendously as far as kids who are home being able to access materials. There's even chat features in Google Classroom. Our students are fluent with email. So I mean, our students have access to the teachers. In our building, we made the change to Progress Book earlier this year just for more efficient communication around progress. So I think just being set up with an opportunity to reach out to the teacher through email, through Google Classroom, the accessibility of the content through Google Classroom has really helped. I will say one of the biggest strains on teachers right now is helping kids get caught up once they've been out. So this idea that, normally I teach in 95% of my classes there. Right now, there are days where I'm teaching 75 to 80% of my classes there. When those kids come back, I've got kids who have missed tests and quizzes, who missed a lab, missed this. So like the idea of catching up on those things that can't be done through Google Classroom, it's a strain for our students and for our teachers. So it's a hard piece kind of with this traditional system stuff.
And we are going to manage that by making sure that we attend to both body and mind and heart of our adults and children before we attend to the numbers that, hey, you've got to make up this class. Are you here? Are you engaged? Are you healthy? Or are you not?
I'll ditto what Jack said, but I will also add, at this level, the students are not taking their devices home each night. So a lot of the times, the teachers will send work to the office, and someone will come to the front door, not into the building, and we are able to kind of hand them some of the hard copies. So.
Yeah, I just want to echo Mr. Howard in that, and both of you really in that public appreciation of our teachers during this time.
Staff vaccinations. Again, this is a tribute to the adults that at all levels that work in the system. This is not the case in other school districts. I'm just saying it. Not the case. And then I want to provide some perspective. So we read a lot, there's the local news, the national news, social media, and I know what happens because it happens to me. Our anxiety levels go like this, right? So, here's some perspective from Dave Children's. So here are the weekly totals of students who are admitted to the hospital for COVID, who test positive. Well, I won't say necessarily they're admitted for COVID, they test positive for COVID. So you can see it's gone up every week. These are children ages 7 days to 21 years. But for me, the most telling column is the last column. Patients admitted for COVID who were eligible and vaccinated. 0. So what this tells me is if our children are vaccinated and boosted when eligible, they may get COVID, but they're probably not going to fall into the hospital. And I say probably again, these are all, you can never guarantee what happens. But this is from Dayton Children's, and I think it's important to remember, if there's anything that's going to emphasize vaccination and boost, it's this. So I just wanted to provide some perspective for that. You know, school is absolutely the safest place for our students. For lots of reasons, I think, and I'll say, I think even during this pandemic, school is the safest place for our students. We've always known that school is a low-risk environment. So they need to be here. We want to keep them here. I just, again, Eli mentioned that teachers want to be here in person. I certainly know students do. I certainly know both my principals have told me expressly. The nurses said today, Carrie, these children need to be in school. So I think there is a common agreement. I just want to lay out to the board and to the public about other considerations to think about when the decision is made to go virtual. Sometimes your hand is forced, and if you don't have staff, you don't have staff. And I'm going to tell you, if I make this recommendation to you, it will be because of that reason only. We don't have staff. But here's what we need to think about. We were virtual for an entire year. We saw increased mental health issues, increased suicide ideation and suicide attempts. We saw fewer grade-appropriate social behaviors. Also, you know, some academic decline. If we make the decision to go remote, if we find ourselves in that position like other districts have, I think we might be making a false assumption to think that when we're remote that our children are not together anyway. Back to safe at school. Parents who work outside the home, they may not have the ability to stay home. They may not have the ability to find child care. Both parents who work from the home may not have the ability, or quite honestly, after 22 months, they may not be in the right mental space to work at home and then help their children learn at home. Many students depend on us for food, not only lunch, but breakfast as well. Students lose connection to their peers. You know, they lose the involvement, as Jack mentioned, the high involvement in athletics and extracurriculars. I know students look forward to going to the media center with Mr. Hurwitz for Dungeons and Dragons. I know it. So these are important things that I guess I say this to say it's never just, let's just do this.
I want to kind of put down one thing, is that I have colleagues at Penn State University, and they look specifically at students who lose connection with their peers. And that is something that they looked at specifically in several school districts across the country, and look particularly at students who are historically disenfranchised. And they said that it's the connection with the peers. It takes a while to form, and sustaining that is really important to, keeping all of it. So this is our challenge, and it's a big challenge, especially right now. But this is what we're attempting to preserve.
Another point to consider, which I think is a large one, is that for districts that go remote, how do you know how long? I had a discussion with a colleague who was at a neighboring district, who is now, and they're now remote, and they're coming back Tuesday, and I said, how do you know Tuesday is the magic day? He's like, I know. And then you find yourself in a place where what happens if we come back and have to go and live? And so this piece is just disastrous, this back and forth. So I just want everybody to think about those points. Those are points that we should consider. But right now, you saw our numbers, and everyone's working way beyond capacity, and we're getting the job done. And I think as we look at this, we should not say, well, why hasn't the district gone remote? We should say, we are a success story because we are still in person. That is due to all the hard work we've done in the past 22 months. It's due to the commitment of our teachers, our instructional assistants, our custodians, our bus drivers, our secretaries, our principals, Jeff Irick, everybody has a part in keeping us in school. Our substitutes, quite honestly, we could not do it without them. So I just want to make sure everybody kind of remembers that. Our parents and families who trust us with their children, thank you. We need to maybe put on different lenses. This is a success, right? None of us in here are going to be able to say how long it's going to go on. But what we discuss at our meeting every day, the COVID response team, what do I say? We made it from yesterday to today. What's our goal? We're going to make it from today to tomorrow. That's it. And we're going to celebrate that success because it is a success. So I ask that everybody think about it that way. And finally, we need your help. Parents and families, I implore you, if your child is not yet vaccinated, please get your child vaccinated. If they are booster eligible, get them the booster. We know it works. Wear masks in public. There have been some questions about KN95s and N95s and cloth masks.
Wear the mask that you're comfortable with.
My philosophy is if everybody has a mask on, we're starting with a win, right? We have about, we checked today, 1,000 of the type of mask that Jack is wearing and that Judith has on. And we probably have a couple hundred KN95s. So Tina, the Genevieve, if you ever want to see her, go to the middle school, high school when the day starts, because she's always out with her basket. Have a mask. She has KN95s. Kids don't like wearing them. They don't fit well, honestly, for some children. But we do have them, so if anybody needs any, please go to your principal or your office and get some. But we do have a universal mask requirement, and we all wear masks. Make decisions outside of school with COVID safety in mind. Again, this is a holiday weekend that we're coming up on. And this is not like early days of the pandemic where you had do not travel to the state. Again, I believe this is going to be with us. So how do we just start changing our practices and making better decisions? And it doesn't mean you can't do things. It just means you have to think about, how might I do this safely, right? Parents, if your child is sick, please keep them home. If you have any questions, the school nurse will walk you through that, or Mr. Hatter or Ms. Winston. And then lastly, in my mind, maybe most importantly, please be kind. This is so challenging. I'm going to even go further and say, if you have an issue and you want to be angry at something, come to me first. I will take that. Because it's my job to make sure your children get an education. And the only way I can do that is by protecting my teachers and making sure that they are supported in caretaking your children. So be kind. I know we all can do it because this is a special place and it's a testament to the whole community.
one thing I think the public should know is that what you told me, the vast majority of parents also want the schools to stay open, if at all possible. So the parents, the teachers, the children see the importance of it. And I think if there's individuals who, for whatever reasons, feel the necessity to take their children out of school, there's individual reasons why that can make sense. I think that's great. That's understandable. But I think in terms of the schools themselves and keeping them open, there's an overwhelming support for that in the school community, and I just think people need to be aware of that.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. I will say, this is not like last year, where parents could almost at will say, I want to go remote for a while. The board did not sign a resolution to do that. You know, the legislature in Ohio pushed something through at the last minute in December, and so that's a board would have to sign a resolution to do that. We did not do it, and the reason we did not do it is because we don't have the capacity. I am not going to ask my teachers to teach students in front of them and students at home. However, if your child has a documented medical condition where the doctor says that child cannot be in school at this time, or there's a family member who has a health condition and that's documented, and the doctor says this child cannot come to school because of this family member, then you can call Donna first, or student services director, or Ms. Winston or Mr. Haddon. We only have one option for that. Parents may not like it, and it is not an in and out, because it's not, we just don't have the latitude to operate the way we do.
I wanted to say how much I appreciate that you compiled this for me, and I think it shows all of the invisible work that you, the admins, and the nurses, and the teachers do that we don't realize. I think this brings a layer of tangibility to how much work you're putting into tracking what's happening in school, and I'm very appreciative of that, as a parent and as a board member. And I want to also underline how much I'm appreciative of the teachers. I mean, you reported really high vaccination rates. I think we're doing all we can, really, all we can here to keep the schools safe and open and reliable, and I'm very thankful for that.
I would like us to keep our ears open, and we are. I know that you're very cognizant of what's happening in school districts around it. And because, I mean, this is an unusual time. I mean, this peak that they were experiencing with Omicron is very short. And so it caught, with the supply chain disruptions that the country's been, experiencing. I mean, we had a lot of people asking over break if they could get a hold of tests, and so the take-home tests were, in short supply because of that. So there's a managing these kids. Has its particular challenges, and so I want to assure the public that we're going to be, that we're keeping our ears open, and we're also, and we're learning through this process with all of you, and we care.
So, not to belabor this one, but I want to wax things everybody. He said we've been at this for 22 months.
Yes.
I've been with you.
Seems like 22 years.
Yeah. I've been with you for this full 22 months, and I want to point out that I think that our district has consistently been driven by the science. I appreciate how you guys have moved toward this fight. I think we've consistently made the right decisions, whether it was going virtual and when people were coming back. Those were hard decisions at the time. those are always met with a little bit of conflict and, folks online, and it's no different than right now. And I think we're still making the right decision. So everybody out there watching, I want you to think about that track record a little bit. I think that we have consistently used that science to drive us. We made good decisions and continuing to make good decisions. So, well, that's something. Appreciate it.
Is it the commitment to care strong in the community and in the district? And we're just going to keep leaning into that.
I did have some questions before maybe we move on. I know that you talked about how many masks we have for students, which is fantastic. How are we doing on PPE for staff? Do we have
PPE for staff?
Yeah, so maybe masks or anything else that we need.
Honestly, we are set. Yeah, I don't think that there's a need or, I don't think there's a concern about PPE for staff. No one has made me aware.
Perfect, okay. Do we know if we're going to be able to have tests to give to families? I know that there is such a shortage of tests of COVID at the moment.
Speaking of that, just this afternoon, we got an email from ODH that said they are getting 1.2 million tests. They've already distributed 400,000 to K-12 schools and colleges and universities. But there is production issues with the other 800,000. I suspect we will get them when.
But it's coming.
Yes,
Do we know how many we're going to get?
I do not.
We've already received, just since coming back from break, I think 54 is the max they would give us.
54.
We've got another order in, and we've got another order in after that. So we're in line, but we're just waiting.
We got 54 tests.
Yeah. Because they will not allow us to order more than that. I said just keep regular requests going.
Okay. And then, so far we're doing so great. But I want to ask the worst case scenario question. And I know that it's dependent on staffing. What is kind of a cutoff at which point we'll need to consider switching to remote? Hopefully we will never, but.
You're going to ask me for a hard number and I don't have it. I mean, we can kind of see, again, I hope this comes across the right way when I say sometimes it's a guess. We can kind of see based upon quarantines and things like that, what might be coming. But it would be the principal saying, Terry, we can't do it. And I think from talking to my colleagues in other districts, that's kind of how they've had to operate. It's kind of here's the craziness of the time. They wait till the last minute because that's what you want to do, because you want to keep kids in school, and then you have to make the decision, but then it really can't be an immediate decision. I mean, then I have to get with the board, and then even back to the points to consider. Okay, we're going to be out. I got to get people in to make food. It's just...
Now, there's so many logistics here.
Right.
And asking that, I haven't looked at how they've done it in the district that went remote, but did they have it more than one day a warning for families?
I will give you Fairborn's example.
Yeah.
They had 2 days warning because they wanted to tell their parents, but more importantly than that, they had to leave 2 days to prepare all food.
Yeah.
So I will say, I'm not going to give a number, but if you look at the days, like the 11th and 12th, this was warm. So we did it, right? And I can't say that if there's 6 teachers out, we won't be able to do it. It just, we're committed to doing what we can to stay.
Yeah. And you're demonstrating that.
And food would be part of the
thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So, next section is an administrative consent calendar. It's for a couple policies that are first readings, three of them, in fact. As we have a motion there, so, a motion.
I'll second.
All right, anything we need to cover here? Because
No,
it was
just-
all law
just updates.
guiding us, some updates. Okay.
Yeah, and there was that one thing in the, from the organizational meeting, if folks want to read through these, this actually talks a little bit about that $20,000 the bond. So some schools can choose between insurance and bond issuances, and the school chose for bond.
Okay. I have a little.
Okay. Gary Rios,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Hempling,
Yes.
Magnus,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
motion passed, 5-0.
Excellent. All right, so the next is also with our personnel, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, can we look at one here?
No, I usually just do a regular personnel schedule, it's very light, more subs, up to approve, so that's always a good thing. And then one at another.
Excellent. Any questions?
I do have questions. I think that in the conversation that we had in November, you said that you reached full staffing only in December. At some point you say we finally fully staffed the district, and I wanted to ask you where we are at right now.
Yes, we were fully staffed, I think, in November, but some of these, like the support staff, Jack has a secretary who's leaving us next week, and so this, one of these hires is a replacement for them. But we are, in terms of regular staff, we're there. We might need a custodian for some other issues. Illness issues.
Hello?
Gary Rios,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Hempling,
Yes.
Magnus,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
motion passed, 5-0.
Excellent. Okay. Next is board communications. Do we have them?
No, so this would be where the report.
Come on. Excellent.
And there's a lot, so the reports are going to be long, I'm sure.
Probably I should approach you about how
We
this I have
yes,
this.
we can talk about that.
Okay.
And then other board member items, this is typically where we have set up meetings and work sessions in the past. So, I don't know, I think it's probably a good time to do that now, or at least that's what we need for this month, because we've got some things that I know Sherry's got on that she wanted to the table for us.
Just think at some point in the future, we need to talk about strategic plan. And, I don't know, what else I guess, certainly strategic plan is one.
It's a good.
Nothing that has to be done this month, but kind of in the spring, there are some things we need to start addressing.
I'm wondering if you would find it appropriate to add to the strategy plan, maybe a communication strategy that our board should design. And there was another part of that, but I was wondering, it looked like it would be part of that conversation.
Yes.
And I think increasing ways of engaging the public, right? And that's part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will be part of a communication discussion in here.
Traditionally, the strategic plan is part of that strategic vision we put out in the 10-year increments.
Yeah.
We had talked about moving into a 5-year, then the pandemic hit and we never got there. We are a year past, 2 years past now, when the last strategic plan for the village closed. That was a pretty big endeavor with the board.
So I have some thoughts about that,
Okay.
and potentially us working with the Help for Kids to help us develop our strategic plan.
I think kids would be good.
But they were always to develop our strategic plan.
So more focus on that and sort of communicating some of the conversations we've had with you about actually talking about communication, sort of the board strategy. It's a little bit more short term, I think, than it is this strategic plan. Taking through the board protocols, we want to, things like social media that we had a discussion on in the training. That's one topic that I had at least in mind for a work session. And then the big one, of course, is your facilities. So, I mean, I think facilities probably needs to have a board work session and talk with students. We want to make that a question we deal with, or is it other one?
I would imagine that any committee work would come out of the direction of at the work session.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the discussion of not the.
That's when you get started already, so good to hear those.
As Stephen really tied to one another, apart from between facilities and strategic plan, including what we talked about. I think it will be the other side of the same coin here. But I'm wondering if we could have those rather than the first month or something.
So my recommendation for the strategic plan is to, I would like to bring someone from the health for kids in to talk to you about the process, because it's a relatively lengthy process, and they have a great engagement plan. I mean, they have lots of options to discuss with us, and so out of that could certainly come things like facilities, and so there's any work about facilities can do could certainly inform the strategic plan. Same thing with communication strategies. Not that, so those are going to run parallel, if that makes sense, and then
But this first meeting will be focused at facilities and nothing else.
I say we start that way. So 24th January is the fourth Monday, 7 p.m. Here we'll have a work session where we focus on facilities. I'm interested in hearing ideas, and so you guys will be talking, formulate how we potentially could go forward, and let's hash out some ideas.
You repeat that.
Can you repeat the date again?
The fourth Monday.
Fourth Monday, so it's 24th January.
Thank you.
And that will be here. And that will be our work sessions are open to the public. They are board meetings that are announced.
There's no comment section.
There's no comment section, that there's no voting, which I believe you can ask people to come to present, for work sessions, but it's, there's no voting going on, it's just purely a discussion. So, all right. Even the first work session.
Are the work sessions, I think it would be good if they are.
in the past we haven't, we can, I just need to make sure we have tech support. Generally at work sessions, there's no community engagement.
I think if we're doing important issues, work sessions that the public would be interested in particular, which I think a lot of the work sessions actually are interesting issues that people will be interested in, that it would make sense as a way to keep the public.
Are you speaking with Phil now?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to keep arguing.
No, absolutely. I was just saying that we generally don't have public participation in work sessions.
No, I understand that.
But filming, it's an excellent idea.
I know that you had in other work sessions that were important, such as academics and
Academics?
So,
And I think one, honestly, we have one on the, make some work for Jay, on the
yeah.
funding.
Oh, funding. Yeah. I mean, personally, I think there's times when if the public has something to say, we should consider be open to hearing. Men, we could kind of see how it goes.
So some idea with that would be that a work session, as you had as our first gathering of information among ourselves, and then of course we could discuss about having some open forums once we are completed that task. Did you want to?
I hear what you're saying, because sometimes the public actually has useful things that can help just help you make better decisions. I mean, I think we can kind of play it by ear.
Yeah, I think we both agree that we want public engagement. We gave a question about how and when, right? So we definitely can fine tune that as we go on.
next up is going into an executive session. We will not be voting on anything when we come out. We will be done at the end of that. So I think we just need a motion to go into executive session, and then just for the public to know, we will, when we come out, that will be the end of our, so it's doing the purpose of other votes, go on more, all of it. Does anyone have a motion? A second?
Second.
All right, thank you, everybody, thanks for coming.
So, normally we go to the boardroom for executive session so they can start breaking this down for school tomorrow. So in 5 minutes, you'll have to order the chair.
Okay, so we need to take a vote here to
Yes.
go into executive session.